Oh, shit. I have to do this over again. Okay. We'll just do it this way. Footnote. Well, I thought we would talk about today is a couple topics that evolve around the future. So a part of what I'm going to do is talk about some investment products that are available. A part of what I'm going to talk about is the SALVO, the 3 pillars of Does It Pencil. But I love the term begin with the end in mind. Okay, I always have, ever since I read it in the 80s. I love it. And so I want you to just kind of start about thinking about this word, the future, okay? Your future, family's future, grandkids' future, whatever. Because one of my pretty strong points of view is that when we talk about investing in investments, we're really talking about the future. The basic idea being, if I take my money today and put it in this investment bucket, whatever bucket I choose, I want to have more money in my future. Okay, so that's the backdrop of today's sermon. Okay, now that said, I'm going to go back to the well for a second, all right? And the 3 words that I always talk about in Does It Pencil and on this call, because they're so bloody important. These are the 3 pillars. And the pillars are appreciation, cash flow, and the combination. I want you to stare at these 3 words for a second. Okay, so appreciation, cash flow, and the combination, okay? So to quickly review, and we've talked about this a million times, appreciation is measured with a skill set called time value of money. Cash flow is measured with a metric called cash on cash. And the combination is measured using another metric called IRR, or internal rate of return. All right? So as I said before, and I'll say again, these 3 things are the heart and the soul of Does It Pencil training. Okay, in doing this work for 38 years and all the professional work I've done, education I've done, courses I've written, traveled all over the country, just my whole resume. Doing this as much as I have, as long as I have, this has been the centerpiece of my career. I really believe in my heart of hearts that that's what all this stuff is about. It's those 3 decisions. Okay? Now, as I've said before as well, I am in the decision-making business for myself and for my clients, and so are you. That's what we do, is we help people make decisions. And they look to us for guidance for a very simple reason. Nobody wants to make a bad decision. And the flip side of that, which also complements it, is everybody wants to make a good decision. Okay, I'm just going to say that again real quick. This is about making decisions. Want to make good decisions, don't want to make a bad or the wrong decision. And that's really the business that we're in. And that's the business that we're in professionally. It's also the business we're in personally. And if you kind of step up on the big ladder and look at your life in the big box, that's what humans do when they're wandering around all day. I read somewhere one time that we make like 10,000 decisions a day. So maybe someone somewhere wrote, to decide is to be human. I don't know. But that's what we do, okay? All right, so appreciation, cash flow, the combination. That's the first leg of the stool. Here's the second leg. It's what I call life stage investing. And this is not science. This is not art. This is the intersection of the 2. I'm going to put 3 basic guardrails up here. Age groups. Generally, roughly, don't hold me to this, but it just facilitates the conversation. Roughly ages 25 to 40. Roughly ages 41 to 60. And roughly ages 61 on. All right? And I put this up this way because I think 3 is a very magical number. 3 is very easy for people to understand. And in this application, 3 will make my point, okay? So my point starts with this. When you are in this age group, your investing strategy should primarily be for growth. In other words, things that appreciate. Okay, now the question comes, well, why? You know, and I was telling somebody yesterday, I'm like the worst student you ever want in your class because I'm always poking holes in everything. And I'm famous for asking why. It's my Danish heritage. And the reason why is because when you're at that stage of your life, you have enough time left in your life, hopefully, to make up for any mistakes that you have. Okay, and that's a global comment, investing for growth. That's real estate, that's equities, that's whatever you're doing. Okay, take your moonshot when you're 25 to 40 because you have enough time to make up for it later, should it not work out. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And if you study successful people, the fact is most of the time it doesn't work out. That's just the way life is. Okay? All right. Number 2, 41 to 60. This is what I call sum of each. And the each is cash flow and appreciation. So this is the IRR thing. In that middle stage of life, you should still be trying to get some appreciation, but your risk tolerance should drop because now you're further along in your life, and in terms of time left in your life, you don't have as much time to make up for mistakes. Okay, this is not complicated. Then we come to the third one, 61 plus. This is when you invest for income. All right. Now again, these are not hard and fast. These are broad stroke, but these are the 3 things. And if you go to anybody who hangs a shingle and says, I'm an investment advisor, I'm a wealth manager, I'm an investor, they should have these 3 things on the radar, number 1. And we should too, because we are both advisors and we are clients. Okay, whether we're taking advice from somebody else, you're taking it from me, making it up on your own, whatever. Okay, and I think that's really important. I learned a long time ago, and some of us did too, that if you're out there trying to sell somebody something and you don't own it yourself, that's maybe not such a good idea. Okay, I'm a pretty big believer in that. Okay, all right. So those are the 3 pillars. That's the 3 stages of life investing. So we get to this part in these conversations with others or in our head where we say, okay, now what should I do? Okay, what should I do? What should I do? Now, I try to be humble. I'm always honest. And so here's one of those moments. I don't know everything. I have people that I ask too. What should I do? Okay, and some of them have licenses and some of them don't. So I think that this way of being in the world where you have humility, meaning you don't know everything, and you have curiosity, that combination has served me well, and I think it'll serve you well also. Okay, you don't know everything, you can't know everything. So you have to be open to listening to other people, but you also be smart enough to make your own decision and own that as well. Because as I said, and I'll say one more time, we're in the decision-making business here, okay? And we're helping people do that. So to answer this question of what should I do, we're essentially balancing a couple things. And one is emotions, and the other is what I call the empirical. The emotions and the empirical. So I was listening to some guy somewhere last week, it was on the YouTube or whatever it was, and he said something that was very sticky to me. It was a guy talking about selling. And he goes, well, you know, AI doesn't buy anything. Humans buy stuff. And I went, duh. And we need to remember that. as we all have our different levels of fear and involvement and understanding as this AI thing unfolds in our life and in our communities and our world. It's people that make decisions, or they should. And so these two axes, the emotions and the empirical stuff, like that's really where we need to focus. Okay, that's the super important stuff. Now let's talk first about the emotions, and this is actually pretty simple. It's also very damn important. So under the banner of people's emotions, and everybody knows this because you've heard me say this a million times, expectations. Expectations. That is the trigger word for the emotional decision-making function of the human. Okay, and I've also said a million times, people make decisions in a two-step process. Okay, they decide emotionally, they justify rationally. You need both. But we need to remember that people don't say, oh, give me tons of spreadsheets, give me lots of data, let me push the calculator, let me ask the AI, and then I'll decide. That's not really how humans function. We tend to make decisions more emotionally, but we need that empirical piece to justify those decisions. Okay, so they're not mutually exclusive. We need to focus on both of them. Okay. But let me go back to this emotion thing for just a second, because I'm going to give you what I have learned is just the best piece of simple advice out there in these conversations, okay? Everybody has a goal based on their expectations, and it's a very simple word. They'll want to be happy. And we lose sight of that. And we shouldn't. And the recipe is simple. This is like million times Friday. I've said this a million times too. People are happy when their expectations are met or exceeded. So if you're working in an advisory capacity or just doing therapy on yourself, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, well, what are my expectations? Okay, and this is where it gets kind of muddy. Because a lot of times, people have never asked themselves that question. How many times have I said to you, how many times have I said to myself, how many times have I said to my clients? 4 very simple words. What do you want? That seems so simple, and it's so hard for people when they're honest with themselves because they don't know. They don't. And some people never do, but you have to at least try. Okay? But for now, let's keep the focus on the simple. The simple looks like this. When I'm trying to make a decision in the emotional space, understand expectations, exceed those expectations or meet them, people are happy and you've got to win. Okay? And this is one of those things where you've heard this before, you're going to hear it again. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. If I take my $10,000 and go out and my expectation is I can earn 5%, and you come up and say, hey, if you buy this, you'll earn 10%, and I can prove it, and I believe you, am I happy? Hell yes, I'm happy. And then next person comes up and goes, oh, you think that makes you happy? I can give you 20%. Does that mean I'm twice as happy? No, it doesn't. I might be happier, but what happens, and psychologists have studied this, actually happiness becomes a diminishing marker as it's measured empirically. Okay, so don't make this harder than it needs to be. Okay. So the second piece, as I said, is the empirical part. Okay, and the empirical part is the numbers. Okay, and the numbers is the market. Now, most, if not all of you here, work in the market with this product, real estate. And I've been working in this product since 1987. So I've been doing this for a while, as some of you have as well. And we all know that the Kool-Aid we've been drinking, for those of us who don't remember the Reverend Jim Jones, that's a colloquialism, the Kool-Aid, is that we've mostly said, oh, buy real estate because of appreciation. Okay? And that's largely been the asset class performance of real estate. And again, Million Times Friday, I've said it a million times, we go back to the COVID time, it was the criminals at the Fed that lowered interest rates as much as they did. In time value of money, interest rates and present values have an inverse correlation. In other words, when you lower interest rates, present values go up, and that, more than anything else, set the new bar for pricing in the market. Again, we need to ask why. Why did prices go up so much? Why are we having 20% year appreciation? Why? It was the Fed. Okay, now I'm not here to unbox that Pandora today. We've done it before. We'll probably do it again. But that's a part of the empirical nature of that asset class of investing. So let me take a minute and go back to the beginning of where I started this talk today. Okay, I used a very, very important word, future. Okay, the F word, the future. And then I talked about life stage investing. And then I correlated that to some age groups, which is just for conversation purposes. So let me come back to that part and make another argument. Okay, and my argument is this. When I say it's my argument, it's what I believe. You don't have to believe it either. But I argue this because I think it's true. If we look into the future and we look at this word called retirement, and we look at this word agnostically, and what I mean by agnostically, without regard to age group, and we believe that there are three pillars, and you should because there are, and we believe that at the end of this investment life cycle, this life stage investing thing, our primary goal should be investing in income, then why don't we start at the beginning and really kind of have that in our future? Okay? What I just said, even if I didn't say it very well, sorry, let me try to say it more simply. Your ultimate goal should be investing for income and not appreciation. And however you do it, you need to find the intersection of risk, which is measured empirically, and your happiness, which is based on your expectations. That should be your future goal. Whether your future starts today, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, whether you're in your 60s as I am, whether you have grandchildren, whatever. I think that's the conversation that people need to be thinking about. What can I own today? What can I do tomorrow? How can I structure my affairs so that eventually, whenever eventually comes, I own enough, I'll use a metaphor here, enough geese to lay the golden eggs, if you will. Okay? I think that's where people should be focused. This idea about, oh, no, I'm going to take my money and it's going to go up, 20% in 5 years. Who cares? I'd much rather have $3,000 a month for the rest of my life than get a lump sum 5 years in the future. Does that make sense? I mean, it's more predictable. I can spend it, all the utility that money has.